Thus, the universe grew, and it became full of heroes. But where there are heroes, there must also be villains. And ultimately, we would find out which is stronger, good or evil. Today, I document that battle, so the greatest war ever fought won't be a secret war. Greetings, fanboys and fangirls. I'm Erod, and I'm the Blockbuster Buster, and welcome back to a look back at the Marvel Animated Universe. When we last left off, the massive success of X-Men and Spider-Man the Animated Series led Marvel to secure their own animated block, initially aimed for weekday afternoons, and comprised of an Iron Man and Fantastic Four animated series that unfortunately were not up to par with X-Men and Spider-Man during their first seasons, but improved massively during their second year. This was largely due to producer Tom Tataranowicz, who was brought in to whip both shows into shape after the abysmal reviews they got during their first seasons. But unfortunately, by the time that the second season of the Marvel Action Hour had been completed, the damage had been done. Tataranowicz said that while Fox didn't officially tell them that Iron Man and Fantastic Four had been cancelled, the production team pretty much knew that the writing was on the wall, as Fox stopped advertising the shows, and they were just releasing the Season 2 episodes out of order and in different time slots. So the Action Hour team knew that it was time to start focusing on the next Marvel series. Shades of Green. Seeing the massive success that Fox was having with the Marvel cartoons, UPN wanted a piece of the action. Unfortunately, most of the more valuable Marvel properties were already in use, so they set their sights on the Hulk. And Tom Tataranowicz and the rest of the Action Hour team were crafty enough to produce a couple of backdoor pilots as proof of concept. The backdoor pilot in Iron Man was titled Hulkbuster, where the leader finds two of the Mandarin's missing rings, and intends to use them to travel back in time and stop Bruce Banner from becoming the Hulk, and take the power from the Gamma Bomb for himself. Also, as the title would imply, this episode includes the first appearance of Tony's Hulkbuster armor outside of the comics. It's a fun episode in spite of the breakneck pacing, and in Fantastic Four, the backdoor pilot was Nightmare in Green, where Mr. Fantastic asks Bruce Banner for help in changing the Thing back into Ben Grimm. Unfortunately, Dr. Doom finds out about Banner's alter ego and coerces the Hulk into destroying the Fantastic Four. I know this whole episode was just an excuse to have the Thing fight the Hulk, but I'm not complaining. The question is, do these two backdoor pilots count as crossovers? Well, that is a matter of opinion. Because in both of these episodes, the Hulk and Banner are voiced by the incomparable Ron Perlman, who sadly did not go on to voice them in the Solo series. The leader, however, was voiced by Matt Frewer, who played the villain in both. So yes, like I said, it's a matter of opinion. But while that status was in question, what was not in question was whether or not these were successful backdoor pilots, which they were, as UPN picked up the show to premiere in the fall of 1996. The Green Goliath. For those of you who don't know, created in 1962 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, Dr. Bruce Banner was a brilliant scientist and pioneer in the study of gamma radiation, until the day that he was caught in a blast of a gamma bomb, all the while trying to save a boy who had wandered onto the test site. So from that day forth, every time Banner becomes angry or scared, he turns into the nearly unstoppable rage monster known as the Incredible Hulk. Now, as far as the UPN series is concerned, it was produced by Tom Tataranowicz and a lot of the same crew members from the Marvel Action Hour, and premiered on UPN on September 8, 1996, and featured the vocal talents of Neil McDonough as Bruce Banner, Luke Perry as Rick Jones, Jeannie Francis as Betty Ross, John Vernon as General Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, Richard Mole as the Abomination, Matt Frewer as the leader, and the original Hulk himself, Lou Ferrigno, reprising the iconic role. Now, while Iron Man and Fantastic Four had rough starts but finished well, the Hulk was the complete opposite, as it is very much apparent that Tataranowicz was in charge of this show in the beginning, as the first season of The Incredible Hulk is excellent. Seeing Bruce Banner and Rick Jones traveling from place to place, desperately searching for a cure to rid Banner of the Hulk, all the while having to clash with the leader, the Abomination, General Ross, and the Hulkbusters. Season 2, however, was awful. as it was apparent that while UPN wanted the show, the network executive assigned to oversee the series had no clue what the hell the Hulk was, and kept asking for more romance, more drama, and for the characters to dress more fashionably. This continuous friction drove away most of the creative team, including Tataranowicz, and thus, Season 2 was rebranded as The Incredible Hulk and She-Hulk. And other than Cree Summer taking over as the voice of She-Hulk, it sucked. It really sucked. There was way too much focus on She-Hulk, so much so that it felt like she was the main character, and Hulk was just her goofy sidekick. Bruce now randomly turned into the Grey Hulk, which was yet another unnecessary new character that the show had to dedicate time to. And the tone became campy and just flat out ridiculous. So, after 8 episodes, The Incredible Hulk and She-Hulk was mercifully cancelled. Thankfully, we did get one good season out of this show and a couple of really cool crossovers.
Armored allies and adversaries.
The Fantastic Four's Simon Templeman would reprise his role as Dr. Doom in The Incredible Hulk twice, in the Season 2 episode Hollywood Rocks, and the more notable Season 1 episode Doomed, which is pivotal as it is the one where Jennifer Walters becomes She-Hulk. However, the coolest crossover that this show ever had actually happened really early in the series. Helping Hand, Iron Fist. And no, Danny Rand is not in this. Where Bruce and Rick travel to LA in hope that Tony Stark's technology might be the answer of getting rid of the Hulk. Unfortunately, General Ross and the Hulkbusters follow our heroes to the West Coast, so it's up to Iron Man and War Machine to run interference. I cannot emphasize just how awesome this episode is, especially if you're a fan of the Marvel Animated Universe. Containing a few great action sequences, establishing Tony and Bruce as the Science Bros long before the MCU, and not only did we get Robert Hayes as Iron Man, but Tom Kane also returned as his AI, Homer. And Dorian Harewood, who had taken over as War Machine for Iron Man Season 2, also reprised his role. Yes, it's a bummer that James Avery didn't continue playing the character throughout the entire franchise, but hey, Dorian did a great job, so I'm not complaining. Many feel that the show's true ending was the Season 1 finale, the 3-parter Darkness and Light, where Betty Ross separates Bruce Banner and the Hulk. Unfortunately, without Banner, the Hulk is just a savage, destructive beast with no conscience. So the good doctor puts on a suit of high-tech armor and takes on the monster himself in a pretty kick-ass confrontation. In the end, the two remerge, and so Bruce's struggle continues. But while the Marvel Action Hour and The Incredible Hulk came to abrupt ends, X-Men and Spider-Man continued to flourish. So much so that Fox Kids had already greenlit a show to continue their legacy, one that would star one of Marvel's greatest Golden Age heroes.
The Sentinel of Liberty.
For those of you who don't know, created in 1940 by Jack Kirby and Joe Simon, Steve Rogers was a 90-pound weakling who wanted to serve his country during World War II. So he volunteered for Project Rebirth, in which he was injected with an experimental serum that transformed him into a super soldier, gifting him with the physical prowess to make a difference during the ultimate conflict as Captain America. Unfortunately, after the actual war ended, the character became superfluous and faded away, until 1963, when the Avengers found him frozen in ice, fought him out, and offered him a place in their ranks, which he graciously accepted, and eventually went on to become the greatest leader the team has ever had.
Avengers, assemble!
And I know what you're thinking. Erod, I don't remember a Captain America cartoon. And you would be right, because it didn't happen. In fact, I already did a Legends of Fandom video on this subject. So here's the abridged version. The newly formed Marvel Entertainment teamed with Saban to produce a Captain America animated series. And very much like The Incredible Hulk, backdoor pilots were produced in the existing cartoons. In the X-Men episode Old Soldiers, we see Wolverine team up with Cap in World War II to fight some Nazis. And in the Spider-Man episode The Black Cat, we are blatantly shown Cap's origin. And then, in the Six Forgotten Warriors, Spidey teams up with Cap in a team of Golden Age heroes to stop the Red Skull. And it worked because Fox Kids picked up the show, and it was due to premiere in the fall of 1998. And according to series writer Steve Englehart, the show would have taken place in 1942, and follow Cap leading the Howling Commandos, a team that would have been comprised of Bucky Barnes, Gabe Jones, Timothy Dum Dum Dugan, and Peggy Carter. And while our heroes would have battled the likes of Baron Zemo, Baron Strucker, and the Red Skull, the creative team was forbidden from making references to Nazis. So instead, Cap and the Howling Commandos would be battling Hydra and the Red Skull's Skull Troopers. So why didn't this show happen? Well, the answer to that question is directly tied into the fate of the shows that I'm gonna talk about in the next video in this series. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. For now, let's talk about the ultimate crossover. The one that was supposed to involve all of the shows that I've talked about so far.
Secret Wars.
For those of you who don't know, the original 1984 Secret Wars, not to be confused with the 2015 version, was a 12-part event comic that saw most of Marvel's greatest heroes and villains transported to an alien planet by a cosmic being called the Beyonder to battle it out in an epic war to once and for all prove which is strongest, good or evil. And also sell action figures. Yep. Secret Wars was actually a marketing ploy so Marvel could create action figures to compete with DC's massively successful Superpowers action figure line. Ironically, while the toys received a lukewarm reception, the comic was very successful, and it is still fondly remembered by comic book fans, as it threw our favorite characters into an impossible situation to face the ultimate challenge, creating some of the most memorable moments in comic book history, as well as pivotal ones, such as Spider-Man getting his black costume. Yes, that happened during Secret Wars. Suffice it to say, Secret Wars is a massively elaborate comic book event that is beloved by fans, and John Semper Jr. planned to adapt it into Spider-Man the Animated Series. He planned to adapt a 12-part comic into 3 episodes, and that wasn't even the biggest hurdle in his path. Like I said, this was supposed to be a crossover between the 6 existing Marvel cartoons. Unfortunately, getting these characters together proved to be a logistical nightmare. Cap was the easiest. His show was still in development, and they hadn't even started casting it yet. So for Secret Wars, he was voiced by Solid Snake himself, David Hayter, which is why many fans believe that he would have been the one to voice Cap in his solo series. Iron Man was the next easiest. Robert Hayes returned to play the Iron Avenger just as he did in all of his other guest spots. The rest of the heroes, however, were not as easy to get. Remember how I said that Avi Arad didn't want Fantastic Four crossing over with Spider-Man? Well, as it turns out, John Semper Jr. was not fond of that show either, so he took this as an opportunity to create his own version of the Fantastic Four, and recasted Reed, Sue, and Ben, but had Quinton Flynn, who played Johnny Storm in Season 2, reprise his role. So technically, the Fantastic Four cartoon was represented in the crossover, whether Avi Arad liked it or not. The Hulk, of course, was supposed to be in it, but UPN refused to release the rights, so he was replaced with the Lizard. Yup, that's just as good. Strangely, the most complicated characters for them to use for the crossover ended up being the X-Men. Do you remember when I said that they had to fly the entire cast of X-Men from Canada to LA for the crossover with Spider-Man? Well, those ended up being the 2 most expensive episodes of Spider-Man the Animated Series. So there was no way John Semper Jr. was going to get approval to do that again. So he decided to only include one X-Man, Storm. Why Storm? Is it because she's the most powerful X-Man? Is it because John Semper Jr. was practicing his trademark inclusivity? No. The answer is a bit elaborate, so you might want to settle in. If you look up X-Men the Animated Series, Allison Ciali Smith is always listed as the official voice of Storm. However, she was not the first actor to voice the character, nor was she the second. The identity of the first actor that voiced Storm in X-Men the Animated Series is a well-kept secret. Why? Because she was white. Apparently, the producers of the cartoon didn't think anyone would care because it was voiceover. Thankfully, they were informed by Margaret Loesch and representatives from Marvel Comics that the fans would most definitely care. So Los Angeles actor Iona Morris was hired to dub all of Storm's lines for Season 1 and a few episodes of Season 2 that were already in production. However, there was still one little itty-bitty little problem. Iona Morris was from LA, and X-Men was produced in Canada. So the production hired Canadian actor Alison Ciali Smith to voice her for the rest of the series. Fortunately for the Secret Wars crossover, this created a good news, better news scenario. The good news was that now John Semper Jr. had a local X-Men actor that he could use for his crossover. The better news was that Iona Morris was already on the payroll, as she was already part of the cast of Spider-Man the Animated Series, where she voiced Martha Robertson. And that is why Storm is the only X-Man in Secret Wars. I warned you it was elaborate. Furthermore, Spider-Man was only under contract to have 65 episodes, and by season 5, they were getting really close to that 65 episode limit, which meant that they didn't have a lot of episodes to spare, which is the reason why the crossover is only 3 episodes long. And lastly, there was a 3-month delay before Fox greenlit season 5, which gave the crew a shorter production time, and the work was seriously rushed. So as much as I admire and respect the production team's ambition here, there was just no way that their adaptation of Secret Wars was gonna live up to the source material. Chapter 1 is just the Beyonder explaining the challenge and Spider-Man recruiting a limited number of heroes for the war. But in Chapter 2, there's good news. Tony and the Lizard get the teleporter machine working again, and Spider-Man can recruit one more hero. This means that he could choose from the most powerful heroes in the Marvel Universe to help him win this war. That he could potentially choose Doctor Strange, Thor, or Captain Marvel. So of course, he chooses the Black Cat. For reasons. The heroes then spend most of the episode trying to get to the Red Skull's headquarters, who has teamed up with most of the villains that were transported to the planet. The heroes arrive and fight them for about 5 minutes, and then the Red Skull gets away. In Chapter 3, Doom steals the Beyonder's powers and becomes all-powerful, but still gets shot in the back by the Thing with his own elemental splitter, which of course takes away his godlike powers, and effectively the heroes win the conflict. So, outside of the novelty of seeing all these superheroes together, the crossover is very underwhelming, and I hope it doesn't dissuade anyone from checking out the comic, which is freaking awesome. Alas, Secret Wars marked the beginning of the end for this era of Marvel television. So on the next look back at the Marvel Animated Universe, we see how the shows that started it all reached their inevitable conclusion. And we introduce the shows that were supposed to lead into the next era, but sadly didn't, as we near the endgame.